Hello and welcome back to your next lesson. So today we're going to learn how to use the servo. This right here, this blue piece, this is the servo. It has attached 3 wires, a brown, a red, and an orange. And the servo is a type of geared motor that can only rotate 180 degrees. It is controlled by sending electrical pulses from your Uno R3 board. These pulses tell the servo what position it should move to. And we're going to program that after I show you how to wire this up. So these 3 wires, you need 3 other wires to connect into the wires that are connected to your servo. So the brown one is going to go to ground. The red one is a power wire, so that should be connected to the 5V port on your Arduino board. And the orange one is the signal wire and should be connected to one of the digital pins. In this case, today I'm going to use digital pin number 9. So for the brown wire, I am going to connect my black wire in there and connect that to ground. So brown goes to ground. Next, we have the red one, which is the power wire. So I'm going to connect that in the middle there and put it on the 5V, 5 volts one. So this is going to be on the other side of your Arduino board that we haven't used yet. All right, and lastly, for the orange one, I am going to use one of my digital pins. So I'm going to use digital pin number 9. All right, and there's the servo. So you'll notice that the top of the servo there's no arm to hook it to. So how can anything spin in 180 degrees if there's no arm? So go into your kit and get your clear package that looks like this and take out this plastic arm. But be careful, there's some other things in this bag that we won't be using today. So once you have your arm out, just connect that right up to the top, and this is the thing that's going to be spinning back and forth once we program it with instructions to do so.
All right, now I'm going to show you how to program the Arduino to manipulate the servo motor. So we're going to start with an empty sketch. There is an important thing we need to do at the top. We're going to type a pound sign, and instead of define like we've done before, we're going to type include, and then a less than sign, servo.h with a capital S. This is another special directive to the compiler called an include directive, and it is telling the compiler, I want you to take all of the code from this servo.h header file and stick it right up here at the beginning before my program, so then we can use things from this file down here in the program. Next, before the setup function, we're going to declare a very special type of variable called an object. So we do servo with a capital S space, and I'm going to call it my servo. An object is very special because it doesn't just have one value like the integers we've worked with so far. It has methods, which are like functions associated with it. So later on, you'll see what those look like. We're also going to declare an integer called POS for position, and we're going to initialize it to be equal to 0 at the beginning. And I'm adding some comments to these variables so we know what they are. All right, so down in the setup function, there's not too much we need to do. We just need to use the myServo object, and I mentioned they have methods. To call those, you do myServo.attach. This method tells the servo object, this is the pin that the servo's control wire is connected to. So myServo.attach 9 tells the Arduino, the myServo object uses pin 9. And I'm putting a comment there to remind us that in case we look at it later. Now in our loop, we are going to use what's called a for loop. So for position equals 0, that's what we want to start position at the beginning of this loop. And then the second is a condition. So while position is less than or equal to 180, and then we say what we want to do at the end of the loop after it's done. So position plus plus will add 1 to the position. Now, sort of like the functions, this for loop, we use a curly brace to open the body of the loop. Now, for each time this loop runs over the body, from 0 to 180 for that position variable, we want to point the servo to that position. So to do that, there's another method in the servo object. We do myServo.write position. We also don't want to send it zipping back and forth faster than it can handle, because that may break it. So we're going to delay for 15 milliseconds. So now we've written our first loop. This is the for loop. Just to go over what it means one more time, we have this variable called position. We started at 0 at the beginning of the loop. And then we say, while this position is less than or equal to 180, we're going to do the loop body. And then at the end, we're going to add 1 to position to make it 1 greater. And in the body, so for every possible value of position between 0 and 180 in that order, we're going to move the servo to that position and then wait for 15 milliseconds. So that's going to move the servo from 0 to 180 degrees. Now we want to move it back from 180 to 0. So we're going to use another for loop. For, we're going to set position equal to 0 initially again. And then we're going to say, while the position is, we're going to start position at 180 because the servo is already at 180 degrees after our first loop. And then we'll say while position is greater than or equal to 0. So whenever it's greater than or equal to 0, we're going to do the loop body, and then at the end, position minus minus subtracts 1. We open the curly brace for the loop body again, and once again, we're going to do myServo.write position. That method will tell the servo object to point the servo at the position, the number of degrees that's in our position variable, and then another delay for 15 milliseconds. So let's take a step back and look at it one more time. We include the servo.h header file, so we have all of the code for controlling the servo. We have this object, it's a servo object called myServo, and then we have this integer called POS for position, initialized to 0. In our setup function, we tell the myServo object that it's going to use pin 9. And then in our loop function, we have 2 other loops called for loops. The first one says, for all positions between 0 and 180, point the servo to that position 1 at a time and wait 15 milliseconds each time, and then stop when you get to greater than 180. And then the second loop says, now that we're at 180, while it's greater than 0, move it to the position that our POS variable has, and then wait 15 milliseconds, all the way from 180 down to 0. So let's go ahead and upload this to Arduino and see if it works.
All right, now you can see the finished product of the servo, how it's spinning at the top here.